switching over in 3, 2, 1, go.
Greetings, everybody. It is a lovely Wednesday afternoon, and this is Tales from the Bottom of the Ocean, the world's greatest philosophy podcast. Mike's hair looks weird.
No, it doesn't, man.
It does. It looks very strange.
It's the Reese stripes. The Reese spikes. There we go.
The Reese spikes.
Bro, I have a fat ass head. I need to change. I don't work.
It don't work. All right, it's fair enough. All right, so like I said, this is the greatest philosophy podcast in all time, and as a testament to our greatness, why don't you go over to patreon.com/area22. Consider donating.
You got it right.
$1,
Give us
$2,
money.
$3, $4, $5. Much dollars. More. Give us more money than we even know what to do with. Come on.
We need to buy it on D&D shit.
Exactly. We're gonna make D&D content. We need your
D&D shit and
contribution.
condoms. I need both.
Condoms to eat and D&D to play.
No, I blow them up.
What do you do with them afterwards?
Well, they don't like pop. They just like
You make balloon animals?
They all right. The thing about condoms, it's that a government psyop, and like you're actually able to reuse them. They don't want you to know that.
You wash them a bit? Just to see
I don't use them for sex. I just blow them up and I like put them in bathroom sinks and I tie it over the sink and stuff. I'm a prankster.
All right, so Ayn Rand.
Yeah, she's an idiot. Well, we'll find. Keep going. Just tell us about Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand's Objectivism. So Ayn Rand, she came from Russia. I honestly didn't look up too much about her life because her ideas on objectivism are very deep and kind of complicated. So I
can't roll my eyes harder, dude. They're not deep at all.
No, when I say deep, there's just a lot of explanations.
Deep in poo.
Why? Hold on. First off, let me explain Ayn Rand's definition of objectivism. Okay, so
I just pissed off like 20 high school girls.
Why?
Because it's popular like amongst like teenagers.
I thought
It's literally baby's first philosophy, kind of.
Well, no, I mean, based on what I'm hearing in current academia, people just like always like poop on Ayn Rand.
Yeah, for good reasons, but we'll find out why.
All right, so Rand describes objectivism as the concept of man as being a heroic being. Right.
Which is this is the kicker. The heroic being. Read the next part.
With his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life.
That makes absolutely no damn sense right there.
Okay, I'm gonna.
How are you going to be a hero and be only caring about yourself? It makes no sense.
With the productive achievement as his noblest activity, and reason as his only absolute.
So, all right. So if you're a miserable wage cook and go to work, you're a hero. For your own money to spend on your own life because you're selfish.
Mike, you're making a lot of presuppositions that she's not making.
Oh, sure, okay.
No, like okay. So the thing about objectivism, and I'll say this right off the bat, is that it establishes a bunch of axioms that I feel as if you have to adopt in order to have it make sense.
No, that doesn't work.
And
we know why it doesn't work.
Well, no, we know why it doesn't work because basically the reason why she says that it's not.
It goes against human nature. She believes like that men is better off striving for them own personal selves. Humans aren't like that. We're communal animals.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't work. If we were like the Borgs from Star Trek, it would work. But we're not the Borgs.
The Borgs. It's the Borg. But anyway, let's continue.
Whatever.
On. So, the name Objectivism, because this is literally what it was. Like, she wanted to call it some kind of existentialism, but the name was already taken. It derives from the idea...
By an actual philosopher.
Well, a lot of people don't like existentialism either, but from the idea that human knowledge and values are objective. They exist and are determined by the nature of reality to be discovered by one's mind and are not created by the thoughts one has. So it's
that's the closest thing that I could agree with, but your next point's going to make me disagree with it.
Reality exists independently of consciousness?
Wrong.
Why? Why? Why do you think so, Mike?
Do you think reality exists if nothing was there to be conscious of it?
Okay, That's a really
Exactly. Ruined the whole thing.
No. Okay, so this is okay.
We're going down.
No. Okay, so I'm gonna put a T on it right here. We got to talk about this because Okay, so again, I'll repeat it. Reality exists independently of consciousness. Well, that's a really big question. That's a massive question. It's literally the quintessential if a tree falls in the forest, is there anyone? And there's nobody around to hear it. Does it even make a sound or whatever?
To her credit, I will say that while she was around saying these things, people were generally more religious, so it made that sound much more outlandish.
Yeah.
Because since things like God aren't so obviously real, she doesn't really count it as reality. So that's a big issue. But if, like, it just goes to show that, like, even disregarding God for a second, it goes to show that everyone perceives reality differently. So how could you really say that it's independent of consciousness?
Okay, so that's
correct.
Okay, I've been watching a lot of Ayn Rand's interviews.
IQ of 100,000 right here.
And she was explaining the reason she believes that the source of this belief in non-objective reality stemmed from Immanuel Kant. And Immanuel Kant, she
bashed.
Yeah, she bashed.
Yeah.
No, she bashed him because she believed that that the Renaissance was going. I believe this is correct. The Renaissance was going in a particular direction that sort of held rationalism as the sort of highest moral virtue. I'm sorry.
All right, keep going.
Continue going. So and Kant would kind of sort of came along and presuppose this idea that mankind's perceptions of the world were unique onto each individual, and therefore there's no such thing really as objective truth. There's only interpretations.
The thing about Kant is, from what I read about Kant, I believe his like Kantianism is kind of like a subsidiary of hedonism.
Why?
I believe because it's basically kind of the opposite of what Rand's philosophy is, and I think she took it to the different extreme just because how wrong she thought it was.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, it's also because she lives in Russia, and Russia sucks. So then,
yikes.
It doesn't suck, but for some people, it sucks.
Buy Russian fans.
Buy all 2 Russian fans.
Hey, you never know.
Goodbye, Igor and.
Listen, they live in a pretty repressive society. They might be looking for.
That's what I'm saying, though. I'm saying it is an oppressed society, and
especially the women.
Yes, exactly. And she's from originally Russia. She moved to the United States, but she's originally from Russia. It makes sense for someone like her to come up with the philosophy so grounded into capitalism because, communism sucks.
Well, hold on. It's not. So there's a reason why it was so grounded into capitalism because the substantive ideas behind objectivism. Capitalism is really just a vehicle. You got to really focus on why exactly she's going to the she's assuming the ideas that she has are correct. Let me just continue on. So what I really wanted to settle is this whole idea that reality exists independently of consciousness. And you know what? I really have no idea. I honestly have no idea. It's weird. I always believe the phrase that reality is what's the phrase? You are the universe experiencing itself, which is an interesting thing because it's kind of true. But I think it's just what's wrong?
Stop playing with your pen and your fingernails.
Oh, Jesus.
It's getting on the microphone. No, the little dust particles. I was coughing.
Mike,
disgusting.
Relax.
Disgusting.
Mike, relax. Come on, stop posting cringe. But it's interesting because I don't know. Like I said, and
I was cracking his knuckles.
Listen, it feels good.
Amplified by the compression.
I know it is. I'm aware.
What you can do is what I'm gonna do is let's just assume that that's correct for a second.
That what's correct?
That reality exists independently of consciousness.
All right, I could honestly argue. I can honestly see why people would think that. I personally disagree, but let's assume it's correct.
Well, you have to have you have to have an objectivist view of the world,
Yeah. It makes sense to in that because it's that rock probably was there before anyone was there to see it, but
yeah, well, yeah, but also say for instance, you see a child literally being born, and say you also experienced them growing up, and you literally come to the same conclusions when, say, looking at like a rock. Like you look at the rock, and then literally something that what didn't exist yet also agrees that it's a rock. Or even if you don't have the same sort of backgrounds in terms of like.
We should get Dwayne Johnson on the show.
In terms of like
Just invite him on.
Imagine. Like, even if you didn't have the same upbringing in terms of intellectual development, maybe you can describe what it looks like the same way, and you still come to the conclusion, okay, yeah, it's still a rock. You know, so I guess you can say in that sense, but
in very minute senses, yeah, it makes sense. But when you start thinking of things that are abstract or things you can't see, like I don't think a big problem with that is like theoretical physics. Like we learned a lot about space and shit like that, and that's not our reality.
Yeah. Like,
keep going. I want to get to the part where she says, what stupid thing did she say after this?
All right, so human beings have direct contact with reality through sense perception.
That's not that incorrect, actually. It's pretty...
Yeah, it's
But don't you think that's kind of contradicting, though? Because she's literally admitting that people perceive things.
Okay, so I wish I had my book, because I accidentally left it at home. It had the whole dissection of the interview where she was explaining it. And I think what she was saying is that she was saying how the reason why she didn't like Kant is that Kant essentially took this concept of human perception like being somewhat unique. He basically established the presupposition that human perception is unique from human to human being.
Okay.
Which is, she basically was making the case that it's not true, because generally we come to the same conclusions when referencing something with using our perception, and usually people that come up with something different are being somewhat contrarian, you know what I mean? Or they're...
she thought everyone who disagreed with it was contrarian.
Yeah.
And I remember the thing that she was incorrect about, you already said about people, well, I don't know if you said it verbatim, but like that altruism just isn't real.
We're gonna dedicate a good chunk of the podcast talking about that. Okay, so one can obtain objective knowledge from perception through the process of concept formation and inductive logic, yada yada yada.
Yada yada yada.
Well, no, that's kind of. I mean, can they achieve objective knowledge from perception through the process of concept formation and inductive
It's literally
logic?
just like that lamp's a lamp. There we go.
Hold on. Let me think for a second.
Yeah, why don't we? For just a second.
Well, yeah. No, it's what's wrong?
I'm thinking.
No. The proper moral purpose of one's life is the pursuit of one's happiness.
See, but that's such crap.
Hold on.
Huh?
And that the only social system consistent with this morality is one that displays full respect for individual rights embodied in laissez-faire capitalism.
See, but that's such crap, because we saw how that didn't work, because it made people corrupt as hell.
Well, she used the same rationale that most people use when they, which is why I say that she's kind of like the extreme opposite of the communists. Where she basically said that, that wasn't real laissez-faire capitalism. And you'll often hear people say, like, it was...
What was the first half you said?
The proper moral purpose of one's life is the pursuit of one's own happiness.
See, but that's such crap.
Why is it crap?
Think, all right, let's put...
Hold on. Well, how do you define happiness, Mike? Because she defines it a particular way.
Define it for me then.
Okay, so she defines it. She's interchanging the happiness and meaning. Like she doesn't. I don't think she's explaining it particularly well. She says that happiness is essentially.
Like fucking.
She explains happiness as being like complete self-actualization and the appreciation of one's own personal achievements.
So she's equating personal achievements to happiness.
Meaning.
Meaning is happiness. The thing is, the happiness and meaning is like it all stems from peace of mind. If you have peace of mind, you're happy and your life has meaning.
Really?
Yeah, people strive to have these two things to achieve peace of mind. That's what everybody
do they always?
wants. No, they don't, and then they're unhappy. But the thing is...
Well, hold on. What makes people unhappy, Mike?
Not being satisfied.
What does that mean?
That something's not complete to them. And that doesn't...
Okay.
The thing is, that might make sense in a very objective way, but it's subjective as to what makes somebody feel that way. A lot of people feel dissatisfied if they're not helping somebody. Now put this into your head for a second. If it is impossible to achieve your own personal happiness through being altruistic, why would anybody fight any wars? Why would a soldier willingly put their life on the line for themselves? They don't really do that. Some people do join the military for the money and the benefits nowadays, but back in the day, they didn't do that.
They believe they had this sort of higher principle goal in mind. Is what you're trying to say? Yeah,
like you're defending something. It's just that's what it really boils down to. You can defend something, and that's human nature, and that could be altruistic, and it goes against objectivism or schism, whatever the hell it is. I don't care, because it just goes to show humans can be altruistic, and it's just better for humanity to be so.
Okay, so...
And the thing is, also, if you think about it, war is like kind of perpetuated by objectivism, because if like world leaders want to be satisfied in a way that is self-satisfying, they're willing to go to wars, and they won't care about the other people because they're only in it for themselves. It's a problem. It's a dangerous philosophy.
Well, I think what you're doing is that you're kind of missing the mark on the way that she explains selfishness, because one thing
rational selfishness.
Yeah, what
rational
Ayn,
egoism.
Well, yeah, what Ayn Rand, she, in my opinion, she really doesn't explain it particularly well, especially for people who like won't get it. Like,
I don't think it's not that she doesn't explain it well. I think it just is that way, and it's just so hard to grasp her actually being serious about it.
Yeah, and then you end up messing it up, basically.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, then let me just try.
I think you'd really have to actually read Fountainhead, and you'd have to actually read Atlas Shrugged His Shoulders to like kind of get it.
Yeah.
But then I still feel like you wouldn't be doing it the right way. It's not.
It's too corruptible, you're saying.
It's a lot of the reason why people really call her more of an author than a philosopher, because like her philosophy is not. It doesn't really have tenets. It's not really an ethos.
I mean, okay. So one of the things that she talked about, she was explaining how she was explaining why she doesn't agree with this sort of like she kind of says that it's some sort of the way she explains that it's kind of a cult, like a cult of altruistic behavior, to where like so she was explaining how she was explaining this idea of loving unconditionally. That's what kind of she sees it as, like this idea that people that despite their lack of inherent, like their lack of virtues or the lack of ideas of success, should deserve love, and that's kind of the whole Judeo-Christian moral ethos, that you're supposed to love thy neighbor even though you don't by nature, in my opinion. I think she's actually kind of listing it pretty decently here when she talks about it, that all love in a way is, there's no such thing as altruistic care. There's no such thing as care outside of want for some kind of reciprocity from system of rewards, I should say. What she was trying to getting at is that the way that she laid it out is basically, let's say that you had a man and a woman who were married, and they each loved each other, and she was saying how, let's say the man unconditionally loved the wife, the woman, or loved the wife. The way she was framing it was that like the man was essentially saying how I'm so virtuous by nature of me loving you unconditionally that essentially you. See, it's a really
roundabout way of her justifying why she cheated on her husband.
Maybe, I don't know.
Because she did that, by the way.
Maybe I don't really care.
It really doesn't make sense. Like it just like even like
I wish I had my book I wish I had my book because like I had written it down pretty well, I think.
But the thing is, people aren't altruistic to be virtuous. Well, sometimes they are. Yes, sometimes they are, but that's not a given.
Well, the way that she was essentially saying is that what you're going to create is you're going to create like a cult-like reverence towards this idea of altruism, and it's going to essentially, like she was making the case that nobody actually really wants that. Like nobody actually really wants to just seek things out without some kind of reciprocity, because that's all she's really saying based on what I'm reading.
I think it's just a sour worldview, really.
Maybe. I don't like the way that it's a worldview that succeeds in its own framework, and the problem I think that arises is that we just don't have the proper framework to really achieve it. Like especially now,
there's definitely a reason why you hear people say these things. Like I know it's like not really like I kind of do believe in like separating art from the artist.
Yeah.
But it's kind of different with philosophy, because you could kind of pinpoint why the philosophy doesn't work if you see the philosopher being hypocritical about it. That's the reason why I think people do it. Like if it was like, let's say like, I don't want to use the R. Kelly example, but imagine R. Kelly, you like his music, you're not a big fan of him
as a person.
Yeah.
All right.
What do you do with it? That's one thing.
Okay,
like,
hold on.
He's not a hypocrite because he's on kids. He's, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a bad person, but like
No, but
I could still listen to his music and it wouldn't have an impact on the author.
Wait, are you trying to say like?
I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say.
No, I feel no.
I know.
You're trying to say that like someone who preaches like a kind of life mission should try to embody that.
Yes.
Wholeheartedly. Then. Oh, my only point of contention is that like then every Marxist and capitalist, especially in the certain philosophies that embody those two veins of thought, is illegitimate, because Marxists.
Well, wouldn't you know?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. But the thing is, like, you can make the case that then every philosopher is illegitimate.
I don't think that, because not every philosopher is a hypocrite.
Yeah, but they're hypocritical.
Like, when's the last time you saw like Lao Tzu like get off the mountain and like scream his head off and like go into like a bar and knock shit over?
I don't know.
That'd be very anti-Taoist, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
When do you hear about that happening?
Okay. So Taoism. Which one was Tao? Okay, so there's sects of Shinto Buddhism, I think, that completely justify like murdering somebody as a totally moral act.
Okay. Now, if you're going to do that, and then you're gonna like be pussyfooted when it comes to killing someone, and you don't do it, aren't you a hypocrite? And don't you think there's something wrong with that sect?
Yeah. Yeah,
you do, don't you?
There's all well. No, what I'm trying to say is that the hypocrisy. I don't
That's
feel.
That's the second time I used that phrase today. Pussyfooted. I don't even think it's a real word.
It is, but hypocrisy isn't. It's not the greatest way to debunk an entire school of thought. I don't think so.
Why?
Because it's like it's literally inherent to every single person. Like an environmentalist at some point has used a plastic straw,
or has dumped oil on the pavement in the grass.
Yeah,
and smoked a cigar.
Yeah, next to
on top of it.
Yeah, yeah. Or
I get that everyone could be a hypocrite, but to be so like everyone makes a flaw. That's the thing. But it's really easy to pick it apart though. Like, I mean, yeah, environmentalists a lot of the time don't cover every little thing.
Yeah.
But what are they supposed to do? Use friggin' metal straws? Someone died doing that.
But
boomers can't use straws.
But
just kidding.
The point is that like
ivory straws.
The point is that like I what I'm really focused on is just the ideas, because I find the ideas kind of objectivism kind of interesting. I can see some ways that you can apply it. It almost feels like stoicism, a little bit like stoicism.
Yeah. But the thing about stoicism is that it had still had an altruistic qualities of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't for the benefit of the individual. It was for the benefit of like everybody, because everybody was suffering mutually.
Yeah.
It's just selfish.
Let me kind of explain a little bit more of what she kind of meant by selfishness. Is that like the way that she was framing it? It was pretty staunchly anti-Marxist, and it was staunchly anti-postmodern, and if it were around now, it would be pretty much anti-intersectional, because the way, like in terms of like the rules of the intersectional philosophy, and a lot of what she says, a lot of what the warnings that she posits towards people in America, is related to this sort of growing rise of authoritative intersectionality, which is some things that people posit.
Give me like an example of authoritative intersectionality.
Like, okay, so if Ayn Rand were around right now, Ayn Rand would be staunchly not in favor of. I think this is, I don't know if it's still going on, but you know the sort of Asian body of students in Harvard were getting.
I had a feeling I was going to bring up affirmative action if that's what you were meaning.
Well, I'm not going to say the entire thing about affirmative action, but this case in general about how they were up in arms because they were making the case that they were being discriminated against because of their race, because they were overrepresented in that school, in the top echelons of.
So what would be her problem with it?
Okay, so her problem, I'm going to take it pretty much step by step, is in her classification of violence, she makes the case that it's essentially violent to use a kind of government. It's extremely violent and anti.
I think dishonest. Because she was on a big spiel about dishonesty and how
it's completely unconstitutional because she really does revere the Constitution. It's anti-constitutional and, frankly, in her opinion, very anti-American and anti the founding fathers to use stately power to influence the decision making that an individual can make in the world of, say, academia or whichever, which is why she was so much in favor of complete laissez-faire capitalism.
Okay, but
and so like she would see it as being very collectivist, because the reason why is that it is like staunchly anti-individual, and the reason why she felt as if that was bad was because it denies mankind his right to this idea of self-determination, because it was basically making the case that I know that you as Asian people are made up of people who are different amongst each other. You know, like not every Asian person is the same, but what we're going to do is we're going to essentially determine that you aren't free agents. And that she basically makes the case that that's a really strong stepping stone to things like authoritarianism, when the state and the intelligentsia makes the case that people, no matter their station in life, aren't free agents, and that's why she was also very anti socialism and welfare state, because what it did was that it put the moral burden.
She was doing well.
It put the moral. Yeah, she did use welfare and social security in her life, but the argument that she had against it was that it's committing violence by basically making every individual in the society morally culpable for the actions of other human beings.
I'm not really understanding the part where what would she dislike about the Asian community in Harvard, like exactly?
No, she didn't dislike them. I'm saying she
I know that.
She would dislike the case. The reason why is because, for one thing, it's complete.
Well, who does she think's in the wrong? The Asian Americans or the?
No, the state.
The state.
She would think that the state and the intersectional intelligentsia would be wrong. For one thing, okay, so we don't. This was supposed to be kind of a short episode, so we don't really have a lot of time, unfortunately. But she has this idea of witch doctors and Attilas, and I kind of told you a little about this. But the witch doctor is essentially somebody who comes up with these, because this is the crux of Rand's philosophy. This is kind of the big substantive idea that you need to understand if you want to understand objectivism, is that she staunchly, which is to me, in my opinion, I don't think. This is what I think is wrong about her philosophy. She's staunchly anti-transcendent belief. Like, she doesn't believe that there's any transcendent higher principles. And the problem that I'm having is that, like, you can't just divorce mankind from that, because
that's why her philosophy is easy to follow if you're like that.
Yeah, that's the problem I have, because you can just make the case that objectivism is some sort of transcendent high virtue. But she's staunchly against this sort of idea that there are inexplainable higher virtues that you just have to get right. Like, you just have to follow because it's a feeling that you have inside. It's so demonstrably true, and it's right in front of your face. You know, she believed that every individual has to use their own capability as a rational thinking person to dissect the world and integrate it properly in their mind.
I feel like being rational is such a
cop-out.
In a way, but it's also kind of subjective. Like, different people could see something as being rational or irrational.
That's the thing. Like Rand didn't believe in this thing. She didn't necessarily believe that subjectivism didn't exist, but she didn't believe that it could be used as an excuse to
do something irrational.
Well, no, she didn't believe it was an excuse to essentially hold these transcendent beliefs, you know?
All right, a big part of, like, it's easy for her to spout on and on about rationalism because of rational egoism.
Yeah.
Because
it works in the framework.
It does, because if you don't really care about other people's realities, because you don't think it's a separate reality from yours,
yeah,
so for her to see as being irrational is irrational to her, but the person she's experiencing, and I think that's a good word to say, experiencing, would think that she's being irrational, which wouldn't possibly would go straight over her head, because she's only capable of experiencing things from her own shoes.
I guess the only thing I could say to that is what she would make the case is that person isn't really thinking. She would have to, obviously you would have to find out why exactly they think that she's irrational, but she could probably just throw it right in their face by saying that they're not actually thinking.
I think that's why the NPC meme from like a few months ago got a lot of flack.
Yeah, because
like it's literally treating people as if they're not people.
I mean, what's more human than just going along with the crowd?
I know. I guess like two things that I could understand about. Whereas one thing I understand, the one thing I kind of agree with on Rand. I could imagine, like, really thinking that you are the only conscious person because you're not capable of really being in someone else's shoes completely.
Yeah.
I could see someone thinking that, and I could see someone thinking, like, this is all a game. Yeah. Because even though, like, consciousness and existence existed before you didn't experience that, so you could still have a shred of being skeptical of it. Like actually existing. And then she actually had I think a half decent idea of dishonesty, because she believed that like you could be dishonest in other ways other than being upfront with it. Like if you know something someone should know and you don't tell them, you're still being dishonest. I think that isn't wrong.
Yeah.
I also don't know how the hell that fits into objectivism though.
Oh, the idea of dishonesty.
Yeah.
The idea that essentially you're still, I think she's trying to say that you're still kind of culpable of something, even if even if it's not like reality. Directly. I think there's like some leverage in where reality could kind of be wrong, because like truth, like if you don't know the truth and someone else does, are they experiencing a different reality than you? Like it's. She's basically saying that there is a one truth, and
something like that.
Yeah, and even if you don't know it, then that doesn't mean that. She's basically kind of trying to discredit all philosophies that work in different frameworks other than her by saying that even if you operate in one moral and even if you operate under certain presuppositions, if they're just wrong, you're still wrong. Even if everybody's doing all right. I can tell you exactly the reason why she's saying this is because there were success stories in the USSR. Like there were people who were successful. Like there was this guy who, I forget what town he worked in, but he revolutionized the way that they mined coal. Mm-hmm. And he became a wildly successful worker. He was praised as being a brilliant worker, and essentially she would still completely disagree with him, all of that, even if it was, even if he was somewhat successful, because of the Soviet framework, that he's operating in the Soviet framework, and that's just wrong.
And why do you think he did that, though? Do you think he did that? Well, he's in the USSR, so there's no way he could have done that other than to benefit others. And himself, but others too.
Well, okay.
It just goes to show, even in her own homeland, people did act
altruistically.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think that we can operate outside of behavior that gives us direct feedback? Do you think that we can? Do you think that you can have the want to do something despite not not desiring in some way the feedback?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do things that if they don't. I think a lot of people really just care about putting themselves out, and they don't.
I think you're adding way too many layers to it. I'm talking about like the basest sort of.
Do you think people? Well, let me relay it to how I heard it.
Yeah.
Do you think people do things knowing that no one would care?
No, that's not what I'm asking.
All right, then what are you asking?
What I'm asking you is, do you think that? And this goes to anybody who's watching who maybe can chime in to answer this question. Do you think that... Okay, so the way that human beings essentially work, based on my understanding of them, is we, to our credit and our detriment, we operate on the want for reciprocity.
Okay.
And reciprocity requires input and then feedback. It requires it.
Does that Does this... All right, is that required to come from other people?
No. It can actually come from yourself.
Then I would say most actions, yeah, because you want to have a stimulus.
No, I'm not saying most actions. I'm saying, can we operate entirely outside of input feedback? And I mean, I know my answer, but can we operate outside of it at all?
Without ever expecting any outcome from it.
Well, it's not. Don't use the word expect, because it's not a conscious thing. It's all substrative, totally unconscious, crazy. In the mirror, your bones.
Well, yeah, people do things like stupid little things all the time. They don't. There's no reason for it. Like if I'm tapping on the frickin' table all damn day.
Mike, you're thinking way too micro-related to broad.
Then no, I don't think people could do anything like that.
Well, the thing is, I think your brain is completely wired into this concept of input-output sort of psychology. It's the reason why we're able to create civilizations is because, in my opinion, is because we have this sort of hyper-advanced ability to detect when we receive the most positive feedback and receive the most negative feedback. So, like, let's say, let me think for a second. Let's say I, as opposed to directly harming you when you have the most food, I learned that offering you something in return for the food that you have allows me to feed myself and other people. That's it. And I'm not saying positive because that's a positive thing. I'm saying, like, it's having some of my base needs met. It's like a fundamental need.
Okay.
It requires a kind of mechanism that gives you the ability to identify, okay, what exactly is being put in and what exactly is being received, and what system is this operating in that allows me to be able to actually do this. And so, like, the reason why that's kind of the reason why I somewhat agree with her whole idea that all behavior is in some way selfish, which it's not something that I like to say
for survival
lightly.
For basic survival, yeah, is like basically inherently selfish.
Hold on. Okay, give me an example. Give me an example that kind of disproves it, and I'll try to see if I can debunk it.
That people
can act altruistically.
Again, fighting a war for somebody else.
Okay, so let's say I'm an individual soldier, right?
I guess you could say you're defending your home.
Well, hold on. Let's say I'm an individual soldier, and I'm literally just about to shoot somebody.
Okay.
Shut up, Steve. Why would I shoot somebody not expecting the feedback that would come of it in return?
Why would you shoot them not expecting the feedback? Well, what feedback are you expecting?
For one thing, I'd expect myself to have done the job of whatever mission, whatever layers of whatever objective there is on actually killing somebody. I'd expect myself to, again, like, I guess suppose subconsciously you would expect, it's mainly about having your confirmation, your bias is confirmed by ending somebody's life.
I think war might be a bad example because both sides, like, you could say that both sides think they're doing the altruistic thing and they're both actively endangering someone else's life.
No, but my point is that I'm using Rand's objective framework to sort of debunk this idea that it really is this sort of selfless, transcendent idea that you're following when you go do anything.
We might have an easier time moving away from professions and duties when it comes to altruism. Like, let's say we got 1 minute left. All right, so let's say
we can go a little bit longer, a little bit. I know. Just finish your point, Mike.
All right, so let's say you're in the desert.
Yeah.
You are well off. You have water. and you see someone who obviously is about to die and doesn't have water, you give them water.
Okay.
How is there anything about that selfish because you got nothing back?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, you got something back feeling okay and feeling relief that this person's not going to die.
Okay. That's still something.
Yeah, that's still something, but it's not selfish.
Yeah.
Because you gave something away.
Yeah, but you were expecting something in return.
You're expecting something in. That's where this is where the philosophy gets very pedantic.
Yeah, it does, and I sort of agree with you. But I'm using.
But this is the thing. It just doesn't. That's not how it works. Because you're expecting something completely unselfishly.
Are you?
If I throw a freaking if I throw a basketball at the wall, I know it's gonna hit the wall. Is that a selfish thing for me to do?
No, I'll tell you exactly what it is, because you're expecting the laws of nature to operate inside your own head. So why are you expecting it to do that for you? Why can't the ball just phase through the wall?
That doesn't make any damn sense.
No, it does. And I'll explain to you. No, it really does. I'll tell you.
It really doesn't.
No. Listen, Mike, listen.
It's really, that's like really like pseudo-intellectual thinking, though.
No,
you can't apply that.
Let me explain it to you. Let me explain. Are you a being in your own head? Let me ask you that question. Are you a being in your own head? Can you only perceive the world as you can perceive it?
Basically, yeah. I could take guesses as to what other people would look at.
Okay. So, let me ask you a question. Why should the laws of physics operate the way you expect it to?
It is more selfish to think that they shouldn't than that they should.
Well,
why should you be an exception from the law?
Well, I think it's kind of it's selfish for the different reasons on both sides, but it's still selfish.
If I were to throw the ball at I were to throw a ball at the wall, and if I were to expect and demand anything different from the laws of physics from happening, then you are selfish.
I guess,
then you
or
think,
deranged.
because then you think that you are entitled to being outside the laws of physics.
Yeah, but why?
If you understand the law, like
my question is, why are you entitled to it actually responding properly to the way you wanted it to?
Because if it didn't, there'd be a serious problem.
Well, yeah, there would be, but that's
an anomaly.
No, it is an anomaly.
We lock those things up.
That's not the point, though. But the point is that why did you expect it to work in the first place? If you can operate outside of this input-output perception, which is what Ayn Rand's trying to ground as being the root of selfishness, this adherence to this input-output dichotomy. Like, why did you expect the ball to hit the wall at all? Why didn't it just phase through?
Because that's not how it works.
It's not how. Well, that's not what I'm really asking you. I'm asking you, why did you selfishly expect the laws of physics to operate the way that you wanted it to?
That's not selfish.
I mean, based on the way.
Now let's put it this way: instead of a basketball, let's say it's a baby. A baby.
Okay. Yeah.
What should the baby expect?
What should the baby expect?
If I'm hurling this baby into the wall.
You're just talking about that meme where he throws his son at the wall.
I don't know what the hell you're even talking. Oh, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
That's what you're talking about.
Then it is selfish because I'm actively endangering someone else's life.
Today I will throw my infant son into the wall. That's what you're talking about.
The thing about being selfish is that it's only really selfish if someone is not if someone else is losing something else.
No, I'm somewhat agreeing with you, Mike, because in Ayn Rand's, to her discredit, it's a really weird nitpick that she's kind of focusing on this.
It's something that's really easy to argue about, and that's why people think it's a philosophy.
Yeah.
It's easy to argue about because you could just be pedantic and be like, oh, well, actually, you don't really know because it's not in your reality.
Mike, that's not what I'm saying, though.
I know it's not what you're saying, but it's stupid.
I'm not trying to be pedantic.
I know you're not trying to be pedantic. She's trying to be pedantic. No, it's her fault.
No, but my point is that, like, it really is about confirmation bias, Mike. Like, it's like you're biased against anomalous happenings that occur despite the laws of physics.
Well, excuse me for me wanting things to not be.
You're a bigot, Mike. You're a bigot against anomalies, against SCPs.
SCP 3008. What you mean?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, you work at SCP 3008, dude. I'm actually trying to write an SCP. Getting onto the website's pretty hard. If anyone's like there. Help.
If anyone's in the institution, please help my guy Mike find a job.
This whole episode's now redacted. How do we get into this? We were talking about Ayn Rand for like a few minutes, and now we're talking about.
No, I'm trying to explain to you. I was trying to explain like why her idea of selfishness might be somewhat accurate.
And this is why. All right, I'll give you 2 reasons to why people brush this stuff under the rug.
Right.
The first one, and honestly, I have to get this clear, and I don't think it's correct, but a lot of people brush it under because they're being sexist. They don't want to hear it coming out of like a adulterous woman's mouth, and I think that's wrong.
Okay.
I think it's wrong to discredit everything she says because of what she's done.
Okay,
especially her gender. It's not right at all. That you're an idiot if you really do that to people. But also because of this conversation. Like if you could get to the smallest nitpick and then think it makes sense when it's not applicable to anything, doesn't work. It makes no sense, and why would you want to talk about it?
I guess what she would say to the whole thing about you having water in the desert and someone asks you for it.
It's not nobody asked. You were not asked for this water.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying no one asked you for this water. You willingly gave them this water so they'd live.
I'll tell you this.
It's a selfish action to her because by human nature, I must have done it to feel good about myself. It's impossible for me to actually genuinely want this person to live.
And I guess to dissect it in a way that makes sense, it's you confirming your biases essentially about yourself, about your own kind of virtuousness. I'm virtuous, so I will give this water.
Which, that does have a philosophical standing, but it's not something. I think it's detrimental to actually think that.
That's fair enough. Okay, so let me. I will explain how she would kind of see that sort of example as being kind of hokey. So she would
That's
say
a new word we learned today from Mark.
No, she
was saying it a lot.
She would say something along the lines of, "Okay, so you think that you're so virtuous that you would hold on, no. This is what she would say. That she said you would think that you're so into this kind of stratosphere about this sort of cult-like reverence to being altruistic that what it does is that it basically you're enslaving yourself to this transcendent belief that doesn't actually really even exist.
Yeah, do you know how stupid that sounds?
It's an argument that you can make. It's
really, I think thinking like that's actively dangerous.
It's an argument that you can make. That's what she's saying. That is the problem with the idea of altruistic behavior. What she was,
you can definitely you could definitely run rampant with altruism and only do it for yourself.
Yeah,
you could do that, but oh man, that guy saved someone else's life just to make himself feel good. Okay, he's being selfish, but he's also not being selfish in a way.
The problem,
and I don't think there's something, maybe there's a little something warped about it. But if you're gonna be like a serial helper, who cares?
Well, okay, so Mike, let's expand upon that. So like that's okay. So serial helpers is kind of the way that, I'm not going to use the word SJW because that's a tried word. Is the way that I suppose the intersectional crowd might sort of see themselves as. They see themselves as the sort of moral agents to correct the injustices in the world. This is what she kind of predicted, that people similar to this would begin to start rising up in American society. And I'm not necessarily staunchly like anti intersectionality. I'm approaching it from the way that she would.
The thing about it is, I get where she's coming from. I get where she's coming from. I think that makes a little bit of sense. But in a way, it's kind of necessary. Because, like, then things that, like, people, like, all right, people really are oppressed. There's people who are legitimately oppressed for dumb reasons.
Yep.
And the tried word SJW, they may be going about liberating them the wrong way. But at least if they're doing it the wrong way, people will think about how to do it the right way.
Well, do you know why she thinks that you're doing it the wrong way, though?
Yes, I do, and I would almost agree.
Why do you think?
Because it gets very extremist, and it becomes almost like it kind of raises inequality because they want something kind of outlandish.
Well, it's the reason why she disagrees with it is because they try to incorporate this idea of liberation, and they leave it up to the entity, the state entity. And that's the problem that she had. That's why she was.
Because they're not going to do it.
The problem that she had was that the reason why you had she explained the reason why there were the robber barons and the people who abused capitalism and stuff like that is because of these she was saying how the state was essentially imploring this to happen with policies that cause this normally free exchange behavior to become extremely corrupt,
which causes other people to feel oppressed, at least.
Yeah, and then what she was saying has during the time she was doing this interview in like 1959 or something like that, there were labor movements arising up in Britain and stuff like that, and the thing she said was, in some respects they were credible, but the main problem that a lot of their chief intellectuals are running into is that they're using sort of stately power in order to commit violence, essentially on the other side. Like that, what she was making the case that for is what it ends up being is that first it's the rich oppressing the poor, and now it's going to be the poor oppressing the rich. It's basically like a back and forth constant cycle. That
did she offer any alternative ways of going about it, though?
Yes, actually she did, and it was interesting, but it's like you said, I do agree with you. I don't think it's ever really going to come into fruition.
We should probably do a part 2 on this episode.
I can end it off kind of with this thought. What she essentially was making the case for, in her worldview, the chief concept is that every man's an individual. Chiefly, you cannot, so you cannot simultaneously believe in the individual and
the collective.
Well, kinda. It's
I think
how should I say?
I think a good way of thinking about it, maybe, I'm not sure if I'm getting it right, is that people. I think she may have thought this: the individual should disregard any labels that could be given to them and just focus on being them.
Essentially,
which I don't think is which isn't flawed, which in and of itself isn't flawed, but adding the part of being selfishness kind of ruins it.
Yeah.
I think without rational egoism, I think that would be a pretty good philosophy. And I could see, and I use the same kind of thing to jab at intersectionality, that if people stop giving themselves labels, things would kind of like even out. And I think the fact that labels ever existed is why there's always problems.
That's really what she's saying.
I agree with that, but I think it's tainted by almost everything else.
Yeah. What she was saying is that people, as individuals, if we want to enact change throughout the world in a collective sort of way, what we need to do is we need to have consensual conversations between one another as individuals and determine what is the best course that we can embark on together. And another thing that she was explaining is that, like, let's just, in this world where we consider a person as not an individual but as a collective agent, as an agent of their collective, like in the case of Harvard versus Asians, they're basically, the reason why Harvard's acting immorally in her eyes is because they're reducing the Asian populate, because it's literally, if you scratched an Asian on the sheet,
I know what you mean.
Then that's kind of what it means. She's denying them the ability of self-determinism they're denying them the ability of self-determinism by determining them as not as free agents, but as a kind of societal collective with their own kinds of privileges and et cetera. And
I think that makes sense. But the thing is, it's not like an actual thing she said because she just wasn't around for it. And we got to wrap this up.
But that's essentially what she was kind of getting at. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that.
I think I learned a lot.
I try not. That's why I try not to approach it in the sense that that's why I don't really kind of listen to the fluff about how she's a hypocrite, because you can divine some interesting things from people's ideas, and that's what this show is all about, discussing ideas.
Yeah, I guess you should separate the artist from the art. Whatever the art, the artist from the art, no matter what. I think you could do that with philosophy too.
Did you enjoy yourself, Mike?
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much for watching. My name is Austin Andrews.
Mike Kemp, give us money.
Please, patreon.com/area22. I unfortunately won't be streaming because I have to tonight.
He has to go to a thing.
Yeah, I have to go to a thing. So I hope you enjoyed this. Consider following us on Instagram @Tales Podcast. Follow me @Drumacia. He's Mike the Gas Man.
Yeah, like our page. We're on Area 22 Productions Facebook, and we also have a podcast page. Tales from the Bottom of the Ocean.
Same name on Facebook. Consider
Same
following.
name. Yeah, it's fun. We post.
Cringe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching, and we're going down.
Word.